Hey there, I'm Scott Winfield, and welcome to Victorian Opera's web series Artists in Isolation. On this episode, we're delighted to be joined by prolific musicians and the artistic directors of the Port Fairy Spring Music Festival, Monica Curro and Stefan Cassomenos. Monica and Stefan, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Scott. Hello.
Thanks, Scott. Hi.
I would love to know, when did you two meet and when did you guys come together as a couple?
Right.
Okay.
Waste no
Getting
time, straight to the point.
Straight into the lofty,
Straight down to business
philosophical
there,
subjects.
Scotty.
Yeah.
Well, we first met in 2010, I think it was. I had just stepped out of piano class at the Australian National Academy of
Are
Music.
you really going to tell this? Okay, sure.
And I I had just watched Monica's brother Dan Curro play an item in piano class with a friend of mine. And
Dan plays cello. by the
Dan
way.
plays the cello, so they
Clarity.
played a piece for piano and cello. And then we came out of piano class, and I hadn't met Monica before, and I saw her there, and then as I was walking down the steps, the person who'd played with Dan said, "Yeah, that's Dan's sister, Monica Curro." I'm like, "Oh, okay." So that was the first time I met Monica, and
But did I actually speak to you that day?
no,
No. So
No.
it was more of an encounter than
Yeah.
an actual hello.
that's
How you
right.
going?
Yeah. I was a student at ANAM and Monica was teaching people at ANAM. So that's when we first met. And then
Ages later.
ages later,
Ages.
we were at the ANAM Christmas party and we had a big chat there.
About youth orchestras, actually.
Yeah, we're talking about youth orchestras and, the direction of music education, which is really interesting because that's what we're still talking about. And it's been, 10 years since then.
Since that conversation,
almost.
yeah.
And then, I was in a duo with a cello friend of mine called Michael Dallenberg. And we had a bunch of concerts lined up where we were joining forces with violinists, and for one reason or another, over the course of that year, there were 3 concerts coming up, and all 3 of the concerts, the violinists were either became unavailable or in one case hadn't been available in the first place. And so, to cut a long story short, we had to replace a violinist for these 3 concerts. And Michael and I had this conversation about who to ask, and Michael said, "Well, why don't you just call Monica Curro? She'll do it." I'm like, "I can't call Monica Curro. She's in the Melbourne Symphony Orchestra." And he said, "Just call her." So I had a glass of wine and called Monica Curro to ask her to play music with me in my little duo with Michael Dallenberg. And so we talked for about an hour on the phone about all sorts of things. And at the end of the phone conversation, she dropped in that, she was actually free for all 3 of the dates and she could come and play music with us. So then, we played 3 concerts together. And and then about a year after all of that, between 6 months and a year after all of that happened, one thing led to another, and suddenly I found myself living in the same house with Monica. So, we've been living together ever since. So, that's sort of how it happened. Chamber music first, and then...
Warn your daughters, don't play chamber music. It's dangerous. I guess the reason we're still together is that we don't run out of things to talk about. That's the basic thing. And share basic philosophical principles about music, making music, creating new work. Why music? Why support music? Why champion music? Why even engage with it? It's endless. It's an endless topic that you never run out of material or possibilities or plans and plots, and it's exciting stuff.
And then around that time, we were also thinking about starting Plexus. So that sort of
That was a
evolved.
bit later.
That sort of evolved out of that too. Yeah.
You're both so prolific, and 2020 it has been no different. You've done so many different projects with the Melbourne Digital Concert Hall, and of course are involved in the Port Fairy Spring Festival. I wanted to ask you though specifically about Victorian Opera's new work, Three Tales, which you were both vital components of. Could you tell us about that experience?
Well, first of all, Plexus was completely blown away to be approached with this project. It was absolutely amazing. And so that was really exciting.
And I was completely blown away to be asked to write an opera, and not just any opera, but an opera that didn't have to be 3 hours long, which was awesome because writing 25 minutes of really punchy material was
And for only 3 players as well.
and for only 3 players with voices was great. And it was the topic that the libretto that I was assigned was just so up my alley. I loved it. I loved writing Herodias. And it's such an interesting story, and I love those kind of old stories. I'm really interested in old stories. So it was an amazing experience.
He does actually read ancient Greek. He wouldn't want me to say that.
Oh well, try.
Oh wow, that's very
Skill
impressive.
sets.
Indeed.
That's right.
Oh my God.
I try. I'm better at Latin because I actually studied Latin, but yeah. And I've actually bought lots of dictionaries and stuff since we went into lockdown because I want to catch up with, some of the languages that I'm not so familiar with.
Oh, like Sanskrit.
Oh, stop it. No, I'm really interested. I bought a Turkish dictionary because I'm really interested in finding out more about the Turkish language because my family's actually of Greek background, but all of the towns and places that we're from are now in Turkey. So, and my great grandfather spoke fluent Turkish, and there are just there's the occasional word in the Greek language which is Turkish. So I'm finding that really, really interesting at the moment, and I've got my eye on the Albanian dictionary. That one's going to be next, I think.
Usually in my life, prepare and perform a program in the same week as itself. And this was a process that started with a libretto, which was delivered by Daniel Keane, which was phenomenal. And there were years in the development of it. There's such care taken. It's so, I'm not saying that, if you rehearse and perform a program in 1 week, there's not the care taken. It's just that it's the usual thing that you do. So you can do all of that in a week, in the symphony. That's what we do for a living. But to have the luxury of time and development and the workshops for the first drafts of the pieces from the composers, and then speaking to them about, this may work a bit better on the violin if you did it in this inversion, or this artificial harmonic doesn't really sound great on my violin. None of it was kind of mean, or it was the opposite. It was kind of supportive, but you can't tell Beethoven that what he wrote really doesn't work for the violin because he's not here anymore. And B, just to have this kind of, input and collaborative approach, and the time, again, I know we keep talking about time, but it was such a great process, supported, I have to say, at every level of Victorian opera, every level of administrative person and creative person, that it just it had this genesis of its own, where when you ended up with the final, well, it was meant to be a performance this year that's yet to be, but you felt that it really, there was no artistic stone left unturned. And so that was a luxury for me. I really enjoyed all of the processes.
I felt that a lot as a composer. I've often thought that having a workshop stage for a composition is, not my cup of tea, because I really just want to get all of my ideas down and see the whole thing, have the vision for the whole thing, and for that to guide it. I found it really difficult to imagine that I would write any music at all without having imagined how the entire thing is going to go. I feel like I have to have it all in my head, and then I can write it all. And of course, what normally happens when I've got a pressing deadline is I've got 90% of it in my head, and then I have to come up with the remaining 10%, which could be anywhere in the work. I have to come up with that really on the fly, and lucky I can do that too. But in this instance, it was really laid out very clearly that I was going to write 10 minutes of music to start off with, and then that the rest of it was going to be due at some point in the future. And so I did my very best to try and imagine the whole thing, and I had some ideas about structure, but as it turned out, I didn't end up writing 30 minutes of music or 25 minutes of music in the first instance. I actually only wrote 10 minutes, and I only had vague ideas of what was to follow. And having heard those 10 minutes, I found that really advantageous, having heard what my 10 minutes of music sounded like, so that then I could really spend some serious creative time. And creativity really takes heaps of time. You need lots of working on it and then sleeping on it. And the sleeping is really important to that, because that's when your brain does the creative
It fuses
processing.
everything together, yes.
Yeah, and so having that time, over the course of, really it was about a year, I think, or more. It ended up being more than a year to really think about it. And, some of my ideas really came to me out of the blue for what was going to happen. Like, just one day I was driving, I had to drive for 40 minutes, and just idea after idea after idea started coming into my head, and so I had to just turn on my voice memo and sing it into the phone. So it didn't, if you're driving somewhere in a hurry, you can't, there's no other choice. Lucky we have modern technology.
Yeah.
Otherwise, I guess in the old days I would have had to pull over and write it down on my conveniently located manuscript paper.
Yeah, I was going to say pull over the horse and cart.
Yeah, but yeah, so that was a very, very interesting experience for me, and I'd like to think that it might have also a positive impact on my compositional approach.
Away from music, what's your home life like? For instance, who cooks more?
That's for me to answer.
Yeah, I think.
First of all, there is no away from music. There's just no away from music. I think if you do music or visual art or sculpture or dance or poetry or authorship for a living, there is no away. It's a really unusual profession. So the short answer is I do the cooking. And it's not that Stefan can't cook, but I just love it. It's something I've loved doing for ages, and I haven't been able to do in the last 8 years. So if you're looking for silver linings, just the amount of time we've had to do different things, that's one of the things that's come out of it. I've just loved it. And also with our strange and horrific schedules, usually we could be doing 3 or 4 concerts a week, and sometimes rehearsals at night as well. We haven't had family dinner as part of our schedule for a long time. I have a daughter who's 16, and another thing to come out of this has been how marvellous it's been, even if it's just for half an hour, the 3 of us to sit together and share a meal and debrief about the day, or particularly hers, because hers is structured because she's doing Zoom school. So, and she's in year 11, so she's got a lot to talk about. It's really interesting, the subject she's doing. So that's been a complete blessing for me. I've loved it.
I have tried over the course of 9 years to do as much cooking as I possibly can, especially when Monica is really, really busy with lots of stuff and I'm less busy. And so I have a handful of Steffi specialties, which I trot out every so often. There's a couple of curries there. There's, pasta with veal ragu. Steak, yeah, I do a good steak, and soups sometimes. So, but I have to say, the division of cooking labor is really based on skill, and Monica is such a skilled chef that I couldn't possibly compete with it. So, I mean, why would we eat my cooking for months when we could eat Monica's cooking for months?
That's a unanimous opinion in our household, by the way.
Tilde.
And I'm not a chef, I'm a cook. Let's just get that terminology straight.
Oh, sorry. Okay.
I'm an amateur, but
you're
enthusiastic.
if you haven't tried Monica's cooking, anyone who's listening, just come over sometime. Not obviously not in stage 4, but
No.
yeah,
Not in
stage
stage
3.
4 restrictions, but soon enough.
Stage
Soon
3,
enough.
but soon. And yeah, she makes some beautiful things. There's a fantastic Greg Malouf cookbook, which I think Monica's memorized actually. And yeah, some of my favorite things in the world are from that book, and Monica does them really beautifully. It's also a really interesting time for both of us to engage with our culture that we grew up with. So, Monica occasionally makes something and she gasps because it reminds her incredibly of her grandmother, and her grandmother was Italian from the north. And so just occasionally there's something which is really, really nostalgic. And I've found the same, although I'm not terribly good at cooking Greek cuisine, most of it, because some of it is quite complicated. But occasionally Monica will make something which really reminds me so much of my grandfather's cooking, and actually of my mother's cooking. And my mother does cook for us occasionally, and before all the lockdown stuff, when I visited Mum, she'd give us some food and
trays of food. Amazing.
And we'd have it we'd have it in the fridge. But yeah, now Monica's just sort of exploring some of those more complicated recipes, and yeah, it's really nostalgic because it gives us a chance to sort of connect with our past, rather than sort of eating. We love all sorts of food. We order curries in, we order Japanese, and we order burgers and stuff. But yeah, we haven't ordered anything really. We haven't ordered anything online
for months
since March. So yeah, so it's just been amazing seeing Monica enjoy herself so much. She loves cooking,
especially since the two of them pretty well almost always clean up afterwards without even me asking. It's nice.
I like cleaning up.
You're, of course, the artistic directors of the Port Fairy Spring Music Festival. I'm imagining it can't be presented in any way that we would have normally experienced it. Just quickly, as we look ahead, what can we expect?
You can expect
an announcement in about a month.
An announcement. Well, we look forward to that. Very good.
There will be things. There are definitely things.
Yes.
It is not cancelled. Okay, of course it's not in Port Fairy. No one can travel, no one can commit to accommodation.
Well,
we can't get the venues.
Moxie, Port Fairy of our mind. We can cast our mind to anywhere. I'm in Italy or Spain, depending on the day, but digitally.
Yeah, especially with technology. So all we can say at the moment is there will be concerts, and there's an element of our festival this year that means to bring Port Fairy to those concerts, or a sense of place at least. And I can't reveal any more about that either.
Moxie, Stefan, we can't wait to see what you do, and we can't wait to experience the festival in some other way. Thank you so much for joining us, and please stay safe.
Thank you.
Thanks
too,
so much, Scott.
Thank you.
It's a huge pleasure.
For more chats with artists in isolation, you can follow Victorian Opera across social media or visit victorianopera.com.au. I'm Scott Winfield. Thanks for watching.